We have with us today Tony Peters, our pre-sales lead for Acquia Asia. Tony is a passionate technologist with experience in customer data platform design, management, and deployment. As our pre-sales lead in Asia, Tony interacts with enterprise organizations and helps align IT strategies with direct business goals. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Tony. All right, Tony, take it away.
Thanks a lot, Rachel. Okay, so thanks a lot for joining. This is the fourth one in our digital maturity series. And we're going to concentrate on the CDP today. So as a little bit of a recap, we've gone through 3 sessions previously. The first one was really talking about how to get that foundation right, how to understand where you are in that maturity model, what it's all about. The next one was really talking about the CMS. So that foundation of that content, that voice that you want to have, and making sure you get that foundation right, because so many things can go wrong here. Next, we talked about how to personalize across these channels, and then how to actually spread that across multiple channels and do some multi-channel orchestration within there. And this session, we're going to talk about CDP. So we're moving up that maturity model, and we're looking at how that customer data platform can bring that data together and then really help execute across those different channels. You can actually download our ebook on the digital experience maturity model. It gives you some information on how to begin, on how to look at stuff. So take a snapshot of the QR code. You're going to be sent a link to this together with the slides after this, which we'll send those out. So please take a look if you haven't already. So that's a quick recap on that maturity model that we talk about. We talked about that level 1. That level 1 is starting to get that voice out there for your business. You're probably at that level of where you're not doing too many channels, probably sticking to web at the time. You've got a lot of offline services, a lot of silos, etc. Maybe your user design is not optimized across all different channels, but it's a start. At level 2, that caring level, you're starting to go to a more advanced channels. You're starting to do maybe a little bit of manual personalization within there. And digital is seen as an alternative channel to maybe your existing channels, such as offline, your stores, etc. But you're still quite reactive to things. Level 3, you're starting to engage that end-to-end customer service. You're starting to do personalization based on segments. Your design is getting a lot better across these different channels, such as responsive, etc. And the digital is now starting to be more convenient than other channels, which is definitely where we want to be up to at a minimum in this day and age. And we're going to talk about level 4 today. We call that driving. So now you're starting to be not just reactive, but you're starting to drive across these channels. You're starting to be proactive across things like customer service and sales. You're starting to do individual-led personalization. You've got a more humanified design based on your learnings and your personalization and the data to be able to do that. And we're starting to look at that seamless cross-channel journeys. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and that customer experience platform. But as a bit of context and what we want to think about, I want to talk about some of those key takeaways from those previous sessions, because they're still relevant in what we're talking about today. So align what you do with senior management and the pains and goals. So even if you're further down the chain, you might have several levels between you and the senior management. Make sure you understand what keeps them up all night. Well, understand what is they're expected to deliver on to shareholders and board members, etc. Understand what those pains are. So you have to think that whatever you do is aligned to those. Talk to your boss, talk to your management and say, okay, what are their KPIs? Because you want to make sure that you keep them happy, and everything you do, even if because it probably takes resources to do it, is done for a business reason. When you're looking at that appraisal and that digital maturity, you've got to be honest with yourselves all the way along that. So you want to make sure that you understand those gaps and don't say, oh, yes, of course I'm doing personalization, when your basic personalization is putting someone's first name on an email. Be honest with this. Understand the capabilities you have, understand where those gaps are, and understand what is possible to achieve those KPIs and goals. This is very important, and it's going to continue through this messaging, is don't get fixated on business as usual. Why do I say that? It's because change is hard. Change is difficult for humans to get used to. So we tend to try and push back against that naturally. But if we want to move forward and do things like personalization, testing, multi-channel stuff, we can't keep doing things the way we were doing. And that goes with things like a CMS. So you don't want to be using and executing the way you were working on before when you were onto a new platform. It's because you have changed for a reason. When you go on to do your marketing orchestration, you don't want to be doing things the way you were doing before. You've moved on to a new platform or technology or way of working for a reason. So don't try and do things the way you were doing. Be open. Allow yourself room to grow into these new ways of working. And then lastly, and this goes along with all technologies and vendor selections and discussions and implementation, is ensure your platforms are usable by the business users. They need to be set up and usable the way you need to work, and be explicit in what you need. This one's important because many things tend to fail because people look at demos from vendors and demos from their partners, etc., and they think, this is great, this is what I'm going to get. But when the actual delivery comes, it's a little bit different. Or actually, why isn't that shown? That's because it's the art of the possible that you tend to get shown. Now, I hope that vendors are as honest as us and showing reality when it comes out through to those demos, etc. But they are showing what is possible. You need to be explicit when you talk to your development teams and your partners about what you want, and don't take things for granted. Be explicit in what you need and make sure they're set up for you to be able to use. Because if you can't use the technology, it could be the best in the world, but if you can't use it properly, there's no point in investing so much. So make sure you're explicit in saying what you want when you're going through this journey with your partners. Okay, so let's move forward a bit in terms of that. And we're going to talk about a little bit of context on the state of customer data. Because as you're going up that maturity model, you're starting to see you're working with more and more platforms, and you're ending up with more and more data. Now, this brings problems in itself, because unfortunately, our customers and our clients, they're getting more and more demanding. And yeah, consumers expect relationships that marketers struggle to deliver. And the bar has been set very high. You're starting to get consumers thinking about businesses and interactions and digital interactions the way that they have interactions in real life with other people. So, for instance, like, I know you've got plenty of data on me. Everyone knows that, they understand that, but why can't you do a better job of servicing my needs? I opted into your email list cookies, but keep getting messages about this. I mean, what's all that about? Your call center rep has no clue that I'm a loyal customer. How many times have we seen that? So many times you have to repeat yourself. You get passed between department and department. You have to repeat yourself. It's not a great experience, very frustrating. Okay, and you're always showing me ads for things I don't care about. This is terrible. How about if you buy something, someone buys something from you and you're showing ads for the same thing again a week later? It's not really acceptable nowadays, and it brings incredible frustration. But moving forward and enabling these conversations is very difficult. Otherwise, everyone would be doing it properly by now. And we like to say, well, we see that these disconnected systems do make it kind of impossible. Of course, impossible is a strong word. Of course, anything is possible, but you need so much resources to be able to do it properly. We say it really is kind of impossible. So you've got things like your point of sale system can be bringing data into your BI systems. Your e-commerce system could be connected to your CRM. You're starting to have these connections, and you probably have these connections already in one way, shape, or form. And even just on the last webinar, when we talked about connecting up that personalization, you can absolutely bring those segments across from your personalization into your marketing automation. That's entirely possible. But once you go on this journey, you're starting to get integration upon integration upon integration. And you start to get a little bit of a mess, like noodles. Now, I love pad thai as much as the next person, but you don't really want this mess, and you don't particularly want a pad thai situation within your IT setup. You actually want it to be organized and efficient, because it's been the case for a long time now that integrations take a huge part of projects moving forward. And you start to get slowed down, you get fatigue, and it's not very sustainable because you get end of life on products, APIs change, all of these different types of things. And if something changes, you should only have to do one update. Now, if you're having to integrate across multiple systems and you've got that spaghetti, it gets very unmanageable, doesn't it? So with that, I'm going to do a quick poll now. Okay, so it's poll time. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds or so on this one. And I'm going to launch this one now. And it is basically, does your business utilize a data warehouse or data lake? What do I mean by that is, do you have a big sort of data repository where you've plugged in data and you're either setting one up now or you've actually got one working? So let's see what people say on this one. So give it another 15 seconds or so. Don't be shy, don't be shy. Oh, it's about 50-50 right now. Keep those votes coming in. Yeah, we're going on. We're about 10 seconds, people. Oh, very interesting. Okay, just about to close that one. Okay, so we've got our results. Quite a lot of people voted. Thank you very much. And it was actually, let's just end that one. Wow, those results. Actually, it's about 54% have said no and 46% have said yes. So it's about 50-50 actually. But it's good to hear that at least half of you on this call are actually on that journey of got that sort of data warehouse or data lake set up. If you haven't, maybe it's not applicable to you because for whatever business reasons, but I hope you are looking into bringing that data together. Now, when I talk about that, the data warehouse and data lake, it's great that you're bringing that data together. But the way I see it, it tends to be a repository of that data. It's great. You can see, hopefully, see that 360 customer view. You can see that person. You can get the reports, etc. But I liken it to them behind a glass window, so to speak. You can see it. You can see what they're doing, but you can't really interact with what they're doing. It's about reports and understanding. Yes, it absolutely should help drive your strategy, but when you start integrating into actually using that data, it gets a little bit slow to do. And many businesses we speak to have real trouble doing that. Okay, and it's not ideal because you need to be able to execute on that data. What's the point in having all that data if you're just going to get a few reports, etc.? You want to be able to actually use that data and use it efficiently. Now we see another problem as well moving forward in terms of data. And this is where we see that sort of square peg being pushed into a round hole. And why do I say that? It's because we see lots of technology being used in the wrong way. And there's a lot of great technology out there, but it needs to be used for its purpose. Don't try and make something it is not. So an example of this could be a CRM. Now, CRM, there's some great CRM platforms out there. They're there for a reason, and they do their job very well as long as they're set up right. So in case of a CRM, stores lots of data. Yes. Can you see a 360 view of a customer? Yeah, bring in lots of data, and you probably can actually see that. Its primary function, though, is to manage the sales and customer relationships. And what does it execute on? It executes primarily on sales performance. Okay, it doesn't execute on typically sending out your emails, or shouldn't do. It shouldn't execute on your web personalization. It shouldn't execute on advising, okay, your ad traffic, etc. It executes on that sales performance. So even though you've got all that data in there, you can probably see a rich view of that customer. It's going to be a bit difficult to slice and dice that data to get real insights. Probably hasn't got great machine learning in there, and it's not going to execute across all the channels that you want. So even though some people say, okay, great, I've got a CDP in there, there's a good chance, and we've seen this, that actually it's been sold in or set up that the CRM is trying to be their CDP. We see this with a DMP as well. So many of our customers have DMPs. Yes, it can store lots of data, lots of segmentation data and things like that. But its primary function is to deliver optimized and targeted ads. And it executes primarily on advertising and segmentation. okay? And it tends to be very digital orientated. So trying to get the DMP to do more and become a CDP, you can start off with that intent, but it gets very difficult very quickly, especially when you're trying to do it for online, offline as well. And the last one we see as that data repository tries to do CDP tends to be the email and campaign management tools. Again, they store lots of data, lots of that PII, lots of that data about the individual, but its primary function is to manage and deliver one-to-one communications. And what does it execute on? It executes very well on those outbound channels. But is it going to execute on those DMP functions, the advertising, etc.? Is it going to do the web personalization and things like that? No. Of course, you can pump the data into the other channels and try and get it to fit on that, but it's not a CDP. It's a job that is designed for, so let it do its job properly. If we start to then try and make a sort of a chimera, some sort of strange beast, we end up with, again, some sort of pad thai. Again, I'm getting hungry now, even though it's still quite early, but it has no place in IT. And those integration points are going to get very, very tough moving forward. You want to be able to have fun and actually get on with your business, not spend everything doing integration work. So where does that CDP come into play? It comes into play by sitting in the middle of this data and the execution. So like many of the platforms I talked about earlier, we have on the left here, we have many different types of inputs, and they can be both online and offline. Okay, so we're not going to forget about offline on here because it's part of your business or part of many of your businesses. Okay, we've got point of sale, e-commerce, things like email, call center, website, third-party data. So think of all of those inputs that you may already be using for your data warehouse or your CRM, things like that. All of these data inputs can be plugged into the CDP using that open architecture. That data can also be used for sharing as well. So if you've got another platform that needs to use data, or you want to share it with third parties, segmentation data and things, absolutely you should be able to access and share that data, obviously securely. But where that really shines, the CDP, is having those great insights in there, with your dashboards, your machine learning, to driving that strategic view moving forward for your teams. But then it also provides the execution to these platforms, such as web personalization, call center, outbound marketing, direct mail, digital advertising, and things like that. So even though these tools on the right-hand side do a great job on their own, I hope you've got them doing a great job on their own, having to connect them all between each other and trying to get that job, even trying to connect them to the data warehouse types of things and getting that data, it tends to be a pull effort, doesn't it? You're saying, I want to go and grab that data. I want to grab that data. I want to grab that data. Where the CDP comes into play is that you can start to orchestrate those campaigns with those understandings and metrics from within the CDP and then push them to these platforms. So you've got a centralized place to manage these campaigns, to manage this data, get these insights, and then use these tools and basically injecting that data into it. It's a much more efficient way of working, and you get so much more business value from it. You're not looking at these in silo anymore. You're actually looking at them as execution tools as what they are. So it brings that need for that unified solution for disconnected systems and data. The previous webinars, we talked about bringing those tools, bringing those execution points and starting to make use of that data. In this one, we're talking about bringing it to the next level and really pushing for it. So, of course, you want to gain that single customer view, just like you have with that data lake warehouse, etc. Reveal those customer insights. Of course, that's very important for your strategic vision and making sure you're doing things properly. And this is the one I find is really that differentiator, is activating that data across these different channels. Okay, so think of it as being an agnostic platform sits in the middle that pushes across to these execution points for the teams. And all of that needs to happen in real time. Okay, so I'm going to show you a few bits and pieces now of the platform. It's not something I've done in this series yet, but I want to show you some of the context around the CDP and how it can help and how it fits in with these different areas of the of your business in terms of the marketing especially. So the first one we have is the marketing operations, the MOPS team. So they will be charged with making sure that data is coming together, making sure that those tools are usable for the marketing teams. We've got the marketing analysts. They're going to be ones who are looking at that data and driving that marketing strategy. And then you've got the campaign managers. So the campaign managers are really that tip of the spear. They're executing on what the MOPS and the marketing analysts are enabling them to do. So let's have a little look at how some of those can work and how they can actually benefit from this. So we've got our marketing operations team, the MOPS, and I've got a key term here of identity resolution. So I'm going to bring across my screen here. Hopefully you can see this. And I'm going to look at a 360 profile here. So this is just going to demonstrate how we can look at an individual and see the type of data that is coming together that the MOPS team is going to allow and provide with the CDP platform. So we're going to let's click on a profile in here and have a look. And what they're going to be able to see now, and this is a real boost from just using the individual channels like your personalization, web personalization, your marketing automation or your CRM on their own, you're starting to get that view across the data across all of these channels. Okay, so we just had a Q&A question come up that I can answer now. Is like, what's the difference between a CDP versus a data warehouse? That's actually going to be through the execution side of things. Okay, and I'll talk through that in a bit when I talk about the campaign manager. Okay, so but to be able to do their job, they're going to need to have that data all together to be able to do it. So we've got things like we can look at the profile, all of this data that's coming in. We can see, okay, what's the different touch points of the journey of this individual person? So it could be email, there's some discovery, there's online shopping, e-commerce. They browsed the product, an email was sent and opened. They went to a store, they did a support call. So both online and online, there's a timeline of these journeys based on the data that we're bringing in. That's great. We've got a view, just like I hope you would have with your data warehouse. We've got that view in one place across all of these. We can see the transactions. We've got machine learning built in within here. We've got some great algorithms and stuff, and the CDP should be able to use these algorithms to be able to give insights and next best actions. So in this case, it could be things like likelihood to engage, to convert, likelihood to buy, behavioral clusters and recommendations based on your business. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to touch on here is identities. Now, this is important, and this is where a CDP really starts to come into play. This is like bringing that data together and identifying an individual, because when we're interacting with a business, we tend to interact in different ways depending on our context. So I could be using a mobile app, and I could be, okay, I have a login or something like that. But if I go onto my machine, my desktop, I may actually be anonymous. I may be browsing within there. I then go into a store and I'm talking to a sales rep within there. I phone up the call center. I'm using, maybe I've changed my address or I've changed my email address. So we go through life changes. We may change our name because we get married or something. We may have kids where we didn't have a year before. So we're going through changes all the time as humans. Now, this makes it a bit difficult for marketing teams to work with or databases, because when there's changes coming in, sometimes we can be seen as a different person within systems. So if we have a look at the identity resolution that the CDP is doing, we can see that, okay, in this case, we've got, in this case is Katie. She's changed her address a few times, because especially like me, I'm renting, so I change normally every 2 years my address. If I put in a different address, sometimes that can be classed as a different record within there. We could have a different email address that I've set up. So in this case, Katie's using a Yahoo address within here. We all have different addresses because we change jobs, or we change our email provider or something. We could change our phone number. We may move abroad. So it's important identifying someone as an individual and not all disparate disparate people. And this is where that maturity is really starting to come into play, because before, with these individual tools, this is very difficult to be able to do. So let's go back to our deck, and we've got an example of that identity resolution, making those credit card purchases, new loyalty card, abandoned cart, ship to home, those type of things. And if it was before the CDP came in, actually this instance would have 5 different profiles within the system, because we've got different email address. We've got a different, maybe anonymous, but they're using a credit card, and it could be a unique identifier against that. But we're able to resolve that within the CDP and actually say, this is one person and this is their lifetime value of what they've done. Because if you don't have that identity resolution, your metrics and everything can start to get skewed, or very skewed, and you don't get great insights in what is going on. Okay, so identity resolution is important when you're bringing that data together and being able to act on it. So let's come across, and we're going to look at the marketing analysts now. Now, the analysts are the ones who are going to be looking at that data and actually driving insights from them. So let me bring up my screen again. So we see we have here, we can bring up some metrics, we can go into analytics, and it's important to not just have that data sitting in there, but it's important to be able to look at that data and have a look at what it's telling you, driving insights, etc. And it's important to be able to have dashboards and those insights set up for each of the business users that need to look at this data. And that could be very different from a campaign manager to a CMO, to a CEO, might want an overview dashboard. A CIO might want very, very different data. There could be HR, for instance, looking at holes and gaps. There could be BIs, you've got analysts, etc., looking at this. They're all going to have very different needs. So they're going to be looking at different data. So these dashboards need to be applicable to those different needs and be able to be set up and configured within there. So for instance, this one, we could be looking at customer data, customers by lifetime value, category migration. A lot of these ones are retail focused, of course, but there's many different use cases a CDP can be used for. Customer distribution, time to second order, all of this type of information can be set up and looked at within here. But there's also things about likelihood to buy. So it's not just looking at that historical data. We want to be able to have machine learning within these to say, okay, who am I going to target now to actually, who's best going to convert in this context? So we want to make sure we have that data and the insights, but be able to slice and dice and look at it within here. And the great thing about this CDP or Acquia CDP is that you can do it all within that same interface as well. But because it's open, of course, Acquia is that open technology. We've got that full set of open APIs to be able to connect with other things like Power BI, etc., if you want to slice and dice within those. So when you're actually looking at those analytics, you want to make sure that you're not looking in all of these different siloed areas, which is where you've probably started off doing. That as you're going more mature, you've got a central place where you're looking at those. And the last one I want to look at is that campaign manager. So this is the execution phase. And this is so important because, and this is a quote from Forbes, they're saying that 87% of executives are not confident they are leveraging all available customer data. Okay, and this tends to be the real difference between a CDP and a data warehouse, is actually be able to execute and leverage on that data. Okay, so let's bring up my, make sure I bring up the right window. There we go, back into our CDP. And we're actually going to look at a campaign execution now. Now this is the real, real great stuff when we get in here. So let's have a look at one of these. So let me see, I'm just going to choose one of these at random. Okay, so we set it up, we've get a name, etc., because we want to be able to find it if you've got a campaign running. But what we're going to do now is we're going to select an audience. We're going to actually select who we want to be able to speak to and campaign to. We're going to slice and dice that data on how we want to do it based on our KPIs. We're going to choose the content that we want to be able to push through to the platform. And then we're going to choose the platforms on what we're going to execute that campaign on. So what we're doing here was actually selecting all of that data in those customers to execute on, which is going to be really, really handy for those teams. So in this case, we're having we're going to include customers who have placed a transaction in the last 30 days. They've got a high likelihood to buy today within there. So we're using a machine learning segment within there. And all of these rules can be set up and chosen within here. So for instance, machine learning, I could choose optimal email send time for weekdays. I might want to pass that across to my marketing automation platform. So rather than let these platforms such as marketing automation go in and try and do things all within there, we're actually utilizing the power of all of the data to actually segment and actually provide that list from here. It's really, really powerful stuff. So the CDP is allowing us to choose that audience. Maybe we want to exclude some people as well. So we're choosing our audience here. We're starting to maybe add some segment criteria within here. So maybe we've got some customer attributes you want to say. We might want to say they all the people with the closest store, for instance. Maybe their household details, that they have, we know they have children or something. The amount of revenue within a time frame or something. So we might want to then say, okay, the customer attributes, how we want to split that audience out. Maybe you want to do by city. So actually you say, I want to split everyone by city, and you're going to have multiple lists, each one by city, because you might want to say a slightly different message from your store opening in Jakarta than it is to the one in Singapore, for instance, because they're going to have different addresses and imagery within there. We can then say, okay, what's the different segments and variables within there? So, or variants, we want to do an A/B test on those segments to push out. And you can actually test at such a high level now and actually push that test to all these different platforms. So you're not just running an A/B test or testing this content on your output, you're doing it right from all the execution channels individually. You're doing it right at the source, so to speak. Really, really powerful. You then choose your content you want to push across. So this is where your personalization is going to come in. So you might want to say, I want to include my email address, next best offer. I want to include the loyalty points they have. I might want to include a new coupon, the relevant coupon code or something like that you're pulling in. So this is the content, personalized content you're going to push across to that platform. I then choose my destinations. In this case, I've just chosen Martech, our campaign studio. And what it's going to do is going to take all of that data from the CDP and your different sources, and it's going to push it to our marketing automation platform. So this means we don't have to have and set up all of these segments and things like that within each of our execution platforms. In this case, the marketing automation, it all gets done in one place in the CDP. We've chosen it, we've sliced and diced, and now we're pushing it to the execution platform. It's much, much more efficient and much more powerful than doing it on its own. Okay, we can do a cohort analysis as well. So we can take a snapshot, we can look at how it's performing as well. So once we're actually executing on things, we can look back and say, okay, how is the analysis compared to where we did before? We can actually start to look at the benefits all within this single platform as well. And it's not just one destination I've got. I can maybe choose different ones. I can push this into DMP. I can go and do a dump into an external channel. I can do something in an FTP is picking up. I can push these into many different channels that you set up. So I'm doing it in one place, and I'm making efficient use of this data and campaigns to push out across. Nice one place, one-stop solution for doing this. And it's allowing you to leverage that data. So some of the results that we looked at is be able to create that unified view of the customers, including those key KPIs, like customer lifetime value. You're able to go in and analyze that unified data using likelihood to buy models to target high value customers, for instance, and then be able to activate that customer data on multiple channels. And this is very important without leveraging IT resources. Okay. So yeah, just as that summary, gaining that single customer view, we're starting to bring those technologies together. So rather than looking at a customer in your campaign automation tool, in your personalization tools individually, you're starting to look at them in one place now. You're now revealing those customer insights on a unified way, but most importantly from this, and our differentiator, is activating across those different channels, those execution points, all in that real-time platform. Okay, but we're talking about maturity here, and it's like, whoa, this is lots of work to do. And yes, and again, we don't advocate for a big bang approach of bringing in every data point and integrating every execution point at the beginning. It's about starting to bring in data based on your moving forward. So, and this is where David Rabb of the CDPI has said, like, once you're bringing that data in, you'll typically execute a series of tasks. And each of the efforts builds on the last while increasing in complexity and demonstrating more value. So you start to look at that data analysis, the predictive modeling starts coming in on board, that segmentation starts to improve and the communications. So you're starting to get more mature with those channels you're sending out. Those real-time interactions start getting used as well. So you can actually start, if you've got an event, for instance, hopefully events start getting more popular or be able to do in person. So you might start to bring in that data and react on it in real time for an event. And you're starting to do that then across more and more channels moving forward. A couple of examples that I want to show, and we'll send these out that you'll be able to look at these in more detail. One of our customers in Turkey, Archerlink, they are bringing data across into their call centers. So the call center script actually gets personalized based on the individual who's calling to enable the right upsell and cross-sell within there. And they were able to double those conversions from outbound call campaigns. Really nice. We've got Moosejaw. They sell outdoor wear. And the problem is that they started by not really, well, they didn't understand their customers. They didn't understand what was going on, and they got known as blanket discounters. So they were like, okay, discount is working. We're getting more sales, more discounts. And they started to discount everything. And they got known as these sort of expecting discounts everywhere. So they started off by bringing in that online spend and that behavioral information, just a few data points within there to be able to get that data around the likelihood to buy. So if you had a high likelihood to buy within the CDP and the machine learning, you would target and you wouldn't give a discount. You give a mild discount from medium to high likelihood to buy. And if you had a lowest likelihood to buy, you get a higher discount in there. And they were found that by doing this, they were able to improve their margin by 30%. And that is a huge amount for a business. Clark's, they brought in a couple of data points, such as their ad campaign information and their store sales. So a couple of integration points within there. And they wanted to understand whether the online advertising was influencing purchases in store. Now, by doing this and the correlations between that online and offline, they were able to realize that only 2% of offline purchases were influenced by ad campaigns, by those digital campaigns. And they were able to adjust these and be able to give those insights to get it working better. And they were able to attribute 15% more revenue to ad campaigns, including store purchases, etc., and getting a better view of the return on investment. So they were able to start off by just bringing in a few data points and starting to get real results from there. And then we start to get more mature. So some of our more mature customers like Lululemon, who do that sporting wear, they were increasing that, or they wanted to increase that omni-channel engagement, that single view of the customer, and amplify authenticity of the in-store relationships across the digital ecosystem. So they were, of course, able to get that single customer view. They had integrations with things like Oracle, different technologies they were able to bring in. It's not all about, we understand that not everything is run by Acquia all of the time. We do play nicely with other technologies as well. They were able to work with things like email, Facebook, in-store, website personalization. All of these technologies and things and output channels they're able to work with, and intelligent ad suppression. And the results speak for themselves on this. A 15% increase to baseline revenue. And Lululemon's not a small company. They have very decent revenues. So imagine how much a 15% increase that baseline revenue actually is. 50% boost in website visits because the content was much more relevant. to them, and a 25% increase in event participation. So again, we're not just talking about online, we're talking about that offline as well. So through this maturity, Lululemon were able to build up that and then start to use the different execution points, start bringing in offline, and really make a difference to their revenue within that. So some of the key takeaways that we talked about today is your execution tools need to use the data and insights you have. So hopefully you've made a good start or understood on the journey we've been in these sessions that yes, you're going to start getting data, you're going to start connecting up different bits of data as you're moving up there, but to really get going in terms of that great digital experience for the customers, you need to use it in that unified way that we've talked about. And whatever you do, it's for a reason. And this is a theme that we've always gone through. Because it's an investment we're talking about. There's time and resources to set up and execute always. Remember those strategic goals. And lastly, we still live in that physical world. Even with COVID, etc., we still need to interact in ways. There's still shops, there's still call centers, there's still an offline physical world out there. It's not all digital yet. So do not forget about that offline data. It needs to be brought into play. So going back to our maturity model, yes, we've talked about setting up that basic start, getting that voice going, getting onto that personalization, starting to build those segments up and moving up. And then finally, they're all coming into play and you're really starting to execute along there. But what I've talked about today with the CDP is you don't have to start with that CDP once you've got everything else in place. And as you saw with some of our customer examples, some of them have started off with just a few data points. So as you're moving up maybe into level 2, you're starting to get some of that data in, and you can actually start to really boost that data as early as this kind of level 2. You're starting to push data in, and as you're getting to that level 4 where you're really driving, that CDP is, that engine is really moving now. So you're starting to really move forward. So when I talk about this level 4, it doesn't mean you have to start your CDP here. All it means is that you're actually really getting you're starting to really give a massive boost to all of these execution points, and you're getting a great head start by starting that CDP journey a little bit earlier. So you're going to start to build up that ROI, and it's going to start really going, and you're starting to learn as well. All along this journey, you're going to get better and better, plug more data in, you're going to plug more channels and execution points in as you move up. So, excuse me. So I'm going to finish up now. Thank you very much for listening on that one. So, of course, we've covered a lot of different topics. We've almost just scratched the surface on many of these areas, and we can definitely take deeper dives on an individual basis if you want. But we're going to have a few more webinars that are coming up. We're going to have a little bit of a break now, though, for a couple of weeks until our next one. But we're definitely going to be doing a deeper dive into the CDP side of things. We're going to look at things like loyalty program, why CDP is not a CRM. We're going to deeper dive into that, how it's going to work with your current systems, and how to use that CDP for personalized outreach campaigns to drive revenue. We're going to dive deeper into theirs. So we've got a few questions. We can spend a couple of minutes on those. If you can stay, that's great. So what have we got? So we've got, sorry if I can't pronounce your name properly, but Mitum. So should we not have a DMP placed before the CDP? Does the CDP take data from a DMP? Now, it's a very good question. They can work together. That's what I say. One doesn't necessarily have to come before the other. Now, if you're doing a lot of ad campaigns, etc., it's definitely worthwhile using a DMP for that because it's designed for that. The CDP is going to take data to and from that. And really, the CDP is going to help bring data together, such as maybe the web behavior, the outbound marketing segmentation, and things like that. And it can learn from that. So it can bring data into it. And likewise, the CDP can absolutely bring data from that DMP as well. So they work together. How does that CDP unifying a person in spite of having many profile identities? Yes, the CDP does this automatically because we have that identity resolution engine built into the Acquia CDP. So yes, It should be an automatic thing that happens. The idea is it takes a lot of that legwork or a lot of that work out of doing this, and it automates it, which is very, very useful for teams. Another question is, when I use the CDP, does it mean I have to always push it to the destination platform? If so, what are the other use cases? You don't have to. You can still use the individual execution platforms and do the segmentation and things in there, but it's going to be much more efficient and using that data on tap if you use that CDP to take that data and push it in. Now, you may want to tweak some of the marketing automation plans and things in your execution platforms, but you're going to get that great head start by pushing in those email lists, etc., or to the personalization from that CDP within there. And then the last one we've put there, so do channels mean here other system to work with customer data? Yeah, channels. I mean, channels can mean any way that you're communicating and speaking with your customer in this space and different executions. So it could be, for instance, sending out to line, for instance. Typically, you do that from your marketing automation platform. It could be offline sales channel. There could be maybe your sales team have a tablet that's used to help them. So yeah, your channels are going to be very dependent on your business model. So it could be in-source staff that they have, maybe they've got an iPad or something like that, and it's reading off some information about the customer. They scan their loyalty card in or something, and it's like, bang, suddenly they've got this information that's really boosting their conversations and hopefully helping them close a lot better. The call center was another channel that we talked about. So all of that data from the interactions of the customers, yeah, bringing that together and helping out the call center with their job. Because remember I talked about that it's a bad experience for a customer to keep repeating themselves. If that data is coming from the CDP, they filled in something on the web, mobile app, or in store, the call center should have access to that. So a lot of these channels are going to be very dependent on your business, but the CDP helps bring that unified picture and story in the execution of those channels. Okay, I understand that we've kind of gone a little bit over, but some good questions within there. So if you do want to contact us, Rachel is going to be sending out a follow-up email of this with the recording and the slides within there. So please contact us if you want to get any deeper conversations. We've also got a few partners on the call today. We can connect up and have strategic discussions within there. So, and we're going to be doing some links back to our previous webinars in this session, so you can have a look back if you didn't get a chance to join them. So thank you very much. I think I'll pass off to Rachel just as a quick goodbye. But thank you very much for listening. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Tony. Thank you all for attending. Like what Tony said, the slides and the recording of this webinar will be posted on our website and it will be sent to you via email. The rest of the series, it will be available as well. So thanks again for joining us and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.